Hello. Thank you for joining us today. I am Joseph Glaser, Deputy Commissioner of the Westchester County Department of Community Mental Health. The purpose that we have come together for this is to train individuals and help them understand how the service system in Westchester County works to assist those with behavioral health needs. Unfortunately, our service system in this nation, state, and county are very disjointed. And part of the goal of this is to bring all of the service providers together and help them understand how our various service systems work. Individuals with behavioral health needs have very few singular needs. What I mean by that is that people have multiple needs. So as we go through these trainings, we will work with you to help you understand how our service system works. How you help people get benefits, how you help people get housing, how you help people get connected with the services that they need, whether they're mental health needs, substance use needs, developmental or intellectual disability needs, all of the things that we know people need to improve their lives and to move forward on the road to recovery. We have broken this program up into 3 separate units. The first one is really an explanation of the services that are available. The second one is how we access the benefits that will help cover the cost and pay for the expenses of providing these services. The third one is a very important one as well. It is how you, as a healthcare provider working in the community, can keep yourself safe. We thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to working with you as we go forward to make our world a better place for the people we serve. Thank you. Good morning. As Desh mentioned, I'm Joe Glaser. I am the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Community Mental Health. I want to thank all of you on behalf of the County Executive George Latimer and our department for being here today. This is the first of what's going to be a 3-part series of informational training programs geared at care and case managers and our effort to help partner with you and to make all of us collectively more effective in serving the people that we are charged with serving. For us, this is a very important piece and honestly, probably a little overdue, because as this system has changed, our roles are changing too. And we thought that the best thing to do would be to start off with some trainings that are essentially a primer on how the behavioral health system in this county operates. Part of what you're going to hear is our view of the overlapping needs and services that lead us all to seek a better, more integrated service system. So as we think about the people that we're serving, we are striving to look at them in a more holistic fashion, to look at the person, to look at the broader needs, to look at all of the things that we can do to help them on their path towards recovery. And the reason we have asked you to come here and do this training is because you are one of the most crucial parts of that system. You are the individuals who are going to work closely with those, many of whom have the greatest need. Some of them have challenges in connecting to our service system. But each and every one of them deserves the best that we as a system can collectively provide. So as we sit here today, and we're going to be here for a while, and we're going to be back, I believe, in December and again in January, to cover all the basics, to cover our service system. This is an important part of what we can do to help you. Each of the people who are going to be presenting to you, including myself, are accessible to assist you anytime you need some help and guidance. We will be there to help you help others. That's our job with the Department of Community Mental Health.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Annette Peters-Ravolo, and I work at Westchester County Department of Community Mental Health. I'm one of the program directors there. Some of you may know my name, and some of you don't, and that's great. That's fine. What I'm here to do this morning is to talk about DCMH and our role in the county. Some of what I'm going to say is kind of dry and boring, so we're going to go through that really quickly. And then when I was thinking about what are some of the things that we do that are most helpful to you guys as case managers and care managers in the county, is we provide an online directory of services throughout the county, and I'm going to walk you through that. Okay? So what does DCMH do? So as a fairly small but mighty department, we're about 65 strong, we formulate plans for the needs of the residents of Westchester County. We manage state and federal aid allocated to community providers to the tune of about $75 million. And we assure quality service delivery and appropriate availability of services through technical assistance and contract monitoring. We monitor contracts with over 50 agencies covering over 200 programs operating throughout Westchester County. And we oversee the implementation of our countywide plan and services provided, and provide leadership and local direction in the changing behavioral health system in New York State. So basically, we are seen as what they call the local governmental unit that reports to New York State Office of Mental Health, New York State Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse Services, the Office for People with Developmental Delays and Disabilities, to the New York State, so that we need to know sort of the lay of the land in terms of our own county. And that's part of what we do. Those are some of the huge things that we do. This is a really long list of a bunch of stuff that we do. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I think what's most relevant to today is we do a lot of work with folks that need more. So who are the people that you work with that need a little more? Things like assisted outpatient treatment, people who have multiple challenges, those that are homeless, that are high risk due to multiple hospitalizations, multiple incarcerations, or both, those transitioning from jail, transitioning from long-term hospitalization, from child services to adult services, those involved with the mental health court or task, which is treatment alternatives for safer communities, those needing specialized services through SPOA, our single point of access system. We also provide services to the larger community, such as general public and professional training opportunities, such as this one. Our psychological response team is a team that we have that are specially trained staff that is deployed for things like natural disasters, significant events, and to assist the provider community as needed. Among other projects, we are currently launching an integrated care initiative to improve service delivery for people with complex or co-occurring disorders. And we also have staff who sit on various committees throughout the county for special populations, such as domestic violence survivors, older adults, veterans, and the school system. So those are just some of the things that we do in kind of a nutshell. If any of these pique your interest in any way, shape, or form, give us a call and we can talk to you more about what we're doing in those areas. But the last thing I want to do before I sign off is to show you our, now I'm going to go behind the curtain because that's the only way I can do this and actually demonstrate how this works. Now, those of you who have been in our system for a while may remember that we had a green and white book, and it was our directory of services. And it was pretty much considered the Bible for any care managers, case managers, et cetera. Before I worked at the county, I used to supervise case managers, and everybody had that book. It was like everybody, when it came out, it was everyone had to get one, and you'd make notes in it, and you always had it with you all the time. We have since graduated to the 21st century and decided to put it online because it's easier for us to update it, because what would happen obviously with the book is that it was handy and it was great, but by the time we had it printed, it was already outdated and needed revisions. So we would update it like every 2 years, and that was just not as efficient as an online directory. What you see is a note from our commissioner, Michael Orth, and then there are instructions right on the main page I encourage you to look at those instructions, but I'm going to walk you through how it works. But before calling our office, if you can check back with the instructions, that would be great. So this is our main page. We do have some very handy pages that we put together for crisis services. Everything that's listed on this page is also in the directory itself, but we pulled them out for convenience. So there are crisis services listed here. And the next one is inpatient services, both psych inpatient and chemical dependency inpatient services that list a description of the services and how you can reach any of these hospitals or rehab programs. Okay, and then this is the directory search. So there are two ways to search for information on our directory. One is this directory search feature, and the other one is the services map. If you know the name or part of the name of a program or agency that you are searching for, this is a good way to search for them. So you would, we're going to just put in the word family and search, and you have 6 results. What I want to show you now is sort of what an entry looks like. So you would have the name of the agency and or the program. It tells you when was the last time this information was updated, gives you the address, phone number, email if they've provided one to us, website if they've provided one to us, and then a very brief description of the services. Some of them also include the hours, the ages that they serve. Okay? Now, what I will tell you is that what it will pull is any program that has, any agency that has the name family in it will come up here. Okay? But what you'll get is their entire entry for their agency. So Family Services of Westchester has a number of programs under its heading of agency. So it's going to list all of those, their various clinics and programs. So sometimes you might get more information than what you're looking for, so you may have to scroll down for it. Okay? But what it will not pull is the word family from every description or anywhere that it appears in the directory. It's not going to pull that. And then the other way that you can search using the search directory feature is by service type, city, or zip code. So if you wanted to look for, let's say, intellectual and developmental disabilities in Mount Kisco, New York, you could search and you would get 3 results, and it gives you the information of those services there. Okay, so this is more useful if you either know what type of services you're looking for or the name of the program or the agency. If you're not quite sure, but you want to use, do it by location, like where you are, then you would use our services map. So as you can see, there is a map of Westchester County. And there are a number of ways to search on here. So one very quick way, is if you wanted to know where you are right now and search that way, you would click on this button here that says My Location. Now, I'll tell you that if your phone or your device, if you have blocked it so that no one knows where you are, this won't work, but it will flag you to ask you if you want to allow it to know where you are. See, it's asking me now, and I'm going to say sure. And here we are. We're at Westchester Community College. I'm going to take the bus routes off for a moment. Okay? So what this tells you is where you are right now, but doesn't tell you where any services are, right? And that's because you have to check off which services you're looking for. So let's say we check off mental health and chemical dependency services. And you'll see, let me get rid of this thing for a second. You'll see that there are things popping up, these icons. And to know what something is, you just click on the icon. And it will give you that same information that we just saw from the directory search is here. You just have to scroll down to see all of it. But it will explain everything to you. Okay, and whenever you see this one of two, that means that there's another service or other agency in that same location. So if you click the forward button, you'll see that there's another program operating in that same location. Okay? And the different icons correspond to different types of services and programs. Okay, so that's one way to do it. But if you have a client and you need to look for services near their address, you're going to click the Near Me box. And the Near Me box, you just type the address in. So let's say the person lived at 52 West Main Street, and you'll see that it's doing what a GPS would normally do. It's giving me suggestions. So we're going to say 52 West Main Street in Elmsford. Okay? And then I'm going to move this. I will tell you, if you X this out, it's going to X out your address. So you just want to move it out of the way so you can see. Oh, actually, I want to show you something first, so I'm going to put it back. See how it created an orange circle? This orange circle is exactly 5 miles from that point in every direction. You can search for 10 miles, and then it goes like that. Or you can search for 2 miles if you want to be even closer to the client. Okay? So now I'm going to move this out of the way. Now what we haven't figured out is where are the services. So let's click on mental health and chemical dependency, and it shows you all of them everywhere around. But you need to get closer to kind of be able to see what's going on, right? So you can either get closer using the plus and minus zoom buttons, or just using your mouse and I forgot what you call that thing, sort of rolling your mouse a little bit will come up. Okay, so your client's here at 52 West Main Street, and you want to, let's see, you want to get them here to MHA of Westchester at 580 White Plains Road. Okay, well, how do we do that? One of the wonderful things about this map is it can show you the Beeline bus routes and the Beeline bus stops. But what I'm going to show you is that the bus stops only appear if you zoom in, because watch what happens when I zoom out. They go away, and you also it's no longer illuminated. So then you just have to get a little closer, and then they come back, so that you would be able to say to your client, hey, if you click on this, you see that the bus routes are 1 West and 13 are the 2 bus routes that are right outside, well, very close by to their house or their home. And there is one across the street from MHA that is also 1 West and 13. So you know what bus routes to be able to tell people that they can access the services that they're trying to get to. And I think that's pretty much it. So you can always change the layers in terms of what services you want to see. And you can take the bus stops on and off and the bus routes. But just know that if you X out here, it's going to X out your request of the address. And then to put a new address in, you just have to type it in there. And then we can go back to the home page. And I think that's it. Now, I think, Dash, we're doing questions later?
Yes, we're going to do them at the end.
Okay. So let me get you back to our PowerPoint presentation. Okay. Should I go to the next one? Okay, thanks, everybody.
Okay. It's live theater, folks. So, sorry. This okay. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see some familiar faces for the first time in a long time, and really nice to see new friends, too. My name is Adam Black. I'm the Recipient Affairs Specialist with the county's Department of Community Mental Health. In simple terms, I'm a peer advocate. So I am someone with lived experience and have made extensive use of mental health services in Westchester County. And I bring that lived experience and specialized training to the work I do. And I'm tasked with bringing a recipient perspective to the department's programming and planning, and excuse me, really trying to get set here, sorry, and assisting people with accessing services, resolving conflicts. I serve on a number of statewide committees and bring a recipient perspective there. And today, I am going to present you with a bunch of information about peer support services in Westchester County. I'd like you to relax. You don't have to digest this now. I'm going to give you sort of a helicopter tour overview so you can see the terrain of peer services. I'm going to point out some highlights. I just want you to get excited about the range of peer services that we have in Westchester County. Get thinking about how you might be able to utilize them on behalf of your clients, and you're going to get this PowerPoint. You're going to get a handout with these services. The services are listed in the directory Annette just gave you. So let's just take a tour and see what's there. Okay. A couple of items before we do get started on that tour, though. Just what is peer support? I'm going to take this opportunity to make clear for people who are not as familiar. Peer support services are not services delivered by people with lived experience of mental health challenges. There's something quite a bit different. Sherry Mead, who developed an approach called intentional peer support, is one of the most articulate, just beautiful writers about what peer support is all about. You're gonna get these slides, so I'm not gonna read these for you, but it is about a process and a relationship rather than an outcome. With all the pressures within our system, we lose that sometimes, and to really appreciate peer support services and utilize them, I think it's important to understand what it's about, and I just offer you this, and with a reference at the end that you can go to this full document. Okay, the principles of peer support. Something else to understand that I think is essential is the history of peer support services. Now this, I know this looks like an attempt to see how many words could fit on a PowerPoint slide. It is not. It is merely an attempt to sum up a little over 50 years history. Peer support services come out of a broader peer movement. Peer support services are as old as modern psychiatry. They go back to the 1870s. What we have around us today really comes out of a movement that started in the 1960s and 70s that was focused on human rights and civil rights, and that started to create services that stood apart from and frankly in opposition to the mainstream mental health system in response to those abuses and those abridgments of freedom. Gradually, in this long story, the two sides were able to come together, and gradually, and I was there for a lot of it, it was a torturous process, and we now have extensive partnership between the mainstream mental health system and peer support services. Today, and those of you new to the field, you wouldn't know this. Peer support is there, and it's a regular thing. It's the rule rather than the exception. And this is wonderful success. I'll also point out, though, that alongside this growth and success, our movement sometimes struggles with this evolving identity and with maintaining our voice as change agents, which has been part of our value. I'm going to hit you with just one more history slide. I would be remiss if I didn't point out what a remarkable role Westchester County has played in the development. Throughout that history I just cited, Westchester has been at the forefront through the work of remarkable pioneers, really pushing things, as well as a community and government that recognize the strengths of this. There's no county in New York State that has a greater range of peer services and supports than we do. And we're a nationwide and in some cases international leader in peer services. Okay, that is your history lesson. And let's start the tour. There's a lot of confusion I find, and I'd like to clarify about, folks know that, well, there's peer support on the ACT team, and there's a peer-run program. I see one head nodding. I hope this will be helpful. There's a peer support place in White Plains, and then that's a peer-run agency over there. So just to clarify, we have over 20 sources of peer support in Westchester County, and they can, I think it's helpful to break them down into these 4 forms. We have fully run peer agencies, agencies that were started and are run by folks with lived experience in mental health. So examples of that would be Choice, the Center for Career Freedom. I'm going to talk a little bit more about these agencies. The RISE Center in Mount Vernon. We have peer-run programs, fully peer-run programs within traditional non-peer agencies. So examples of that would be like the Westchester Recovery Network of MHA, MHA's Inset Program, Human Development Services Hope House and their living room, daytime respite. We have, so fully run peer services, fully run peer programs within traditional agencies. Then we've got peer support offered as part of traditional services. So a good example of this would be care management programs of traditional providers may have a few peer support staff enhancing their program. Okay, so there's that, and our newest frontier for peer support in Westchester County are mental health peer supports offered in non-mental health settings. That's a little clunky, but to illustrate what that's about is we have peer support in the Westchester County Jail and at Westchester County's Department of Probation. The Westchester Continuum of Care for the Homeless, which serves homeless people throughout the county, is planning on integrating peer support services. So again, I want to give you an overview of terrain, some structure that makes it a little more easy to understand. These are the variety of forms in which peer services come. And now I'm going to give you that promised tour and point out some really exciting highlights. Okay, so examples of peer support in Westchester County. The Center for Career Freedom, I mentioned before, is a fully peer-run agency. This is a technology center where you can go free of charge and you can learn technical skills, formal computer training through a peer service model, one-to-one, self-paced learning that can prepare you for a career move you want to make, or just simply, and I really want to emphasize this because it's overlooked, just to get familiar with technology and avail yourself personally of the resources. And I think we can all understand how left out people are when you're not part of the online world. That's just one example. The Living Room Daytime Respite in Mamaroneck of HDSW provides a homey environment for people who are in crisis. This is an alternative. If sometimes people need a break, they need a brief vacation of sorts in the most therapeutic sense. In the past, when people have needed that, unfortunately, they've had to turn to 911 at times and end up in the emergency room. We want to avoid crisis, and the living room is an example of that. Another peer service, peer benefits advocates, specially trained peers who can assist with applying for and maintaining the important benefits that are so essential, SSI, SSD, et cetera, to folks being able to maintain themselves in the community. And it really has a sort of special feeling when the person you're doing that work with has been through that process themselves. Okay, some more peer services. We're at altitude now. Inset Program of MHA. is an intensive care management type of service that focuses, again, on helping. In this case, it's for people in particular who may be at risk of being subjected to assisted outpatient treatment, which is going to get explained in more detail later today. Court-ordered outpatient treatment. Again, this is a peer support service that steps in before we get to that point. Another MHA program is the Westchester Recovery Network. This is what's called a recovery center. This is a peer support that's linked on that's focused on linking people to their communities. We have had a lot of services that bring people in. We know how to bring people into services. How do we move through services and into the community where full lives are really felt? That's the Westchester Recovery Network. Just some examples of peer support in Westchester County. We have hearing voices groups and alternatives to suicide groups. These are self-led peer support groups that deal with some of the most difficult experiences that people can have, and that typically have gotten you intensive treatment, often against your will, in the mental health system. If you're hearing voices, if you're seeing things that other people aren't seeing, if you're experiencing great despair and considering whether your life is worth living, the threat of imposed treatment has been such that people have felt they can't talk about these experiences, which is just an utter tragedy. These are peer-developed models to allow people to talk in a venue where it's not only okay to talk about these things and there'll be no imposed treatment or emergency services, but actually looks at these experiences as opportunities for growth. It's very exciting. It's just some peer services, and yet more. Okay, again, this is our helicopter tour. I'm trying to show you what's out there. I hope your wheels are turning about maybe people you work with and what could work for them. As I mentioned, we have peer support now in the Westchester County Jail. To support people during that jail time doesn't need to be down dormant time for people with mental health challenges. It can be a time to build skills. At the Westchester County, they're delivered by peers, and then they assist thereafter with the transition into the community. We have a peer-run warm line. That's just one of the services offered through Mount Vernon Rise Center. Again, a big theme here of getting some support before you get to crisis. So if someone, a warm line is not a crisis line, by the way, so it's not the same as a hotline, but so often what people need is someone to talk to. And it's amazing how a brief talk will alleviate what looks like a mental health escalation, and especially with someone who understands your experience. Okay, bringing us in, as I mentioned, there are peer supports threaded throughout traditional services in care management, assertive community treatment, residential programs. Our peer supporters, this is how I got my start, actually, in the year 2000, working within a care management program, as well as in outpatient clinics. Peers enhance and support and add a different wrinkle to traditional services, and also can offer time with things that I know can be really hard for care managers to attend to. Okay, that's our tour of just some of the highlights. Again, I hope those look exciting to you. You'll be getting the handout, so if any of these appeal to you, there's time to figure out how to access. I'm going to provide my contact information. You're always welcome to contact me at any time, and we can even start at square one and just figure what might work for your clients. Wanted to share also that there's some confusion about New York State peer certification. New York State peer certification, New York State is one of 46 states that have a credential for peer support providers. I've provided the
The address of the website of the accrediting agency, the New York Peer Specialist Certification Board. You can attain the certification by taking a series of online classes, passing exams for those classes, completing an application requiring references, and ultimately you have to complete 2,000 hours of internship to get full accreditation. Prior to completing that, if you do the other requirements, you get what's called Provisional Certification. It's not all peer support providers in Westchester County are certified. You must be certified if you're providing a Medicaid reimbursable services, and most employers now require that folks they're hiring, whether it's Medicaid or not, have this certification because it's such a great body of knowledge to have. But there's been some confusion about that, and technically it's not necessary unless you're in a Medicaid billable program. Another thing I'd like to point out is that the online classes are great. That's a really fantastic school, online school that I encourage you all to look at. It's user-friendly, but it is a series of recorded classes. And what we have in Westchester, and no other county has 3 well, they're not in person at the moment, but they are live trainings now taking place online that are offered through the RISE Center Mental Health Empowerment Project, Human Development Services, and MHA Westchester. I'd really like to encourage this as a resource for people whether they're considering pursuing certification and a career in peer support or not, because the learning that goes on there is valuable for anybody within our mental health system. It's very empowering, and everyone is welcome. And there's such a great team environment in those learning resources. So I wanted to be sure to point that out. And we've come to, this is my part, tour's over. Again, though, I didn't expect you to digest this. I just wanted you to get a sense of what's out there. There's so much out there in Westchester County. Again, we're probably top 10 in the country as far as the range and number of peer supports. It's really something special. And so first of all, I want to be your resource. Straight up, call me, contact me anytime, and we can start from square one. If you're interested in learning more about peer support principles, there's a link to the intentional peer support, from which the quote on the first slide came, for a history of the peer movement. And I really want to emphasize that will make you see the people you work with as well as peer support services in a very different light. The Academy of Peer Support, which is open to everyone, has a wonderful class on that. And again, there's my contact information. So I thank you, and I'll be here on the panel to take your questions. Okay.
Hi. So I'm Dash. I introduced myself earlier. I'm a program director at Dcmh. One of the main things I do is oversee the SPOA. So I'm going to talk a lot about the SPOA, all the services we oversee, and a little bit about the history. I'm going to start with this slide. The SPOA started in 1999. Before that, everyone who applied for residential services had to apply to one of 11 different housing agencies. So there were different applications for everything. People would apply to agencies that didn't have the right level of care. They would apply to agencies that were full when other agencies had openings. They would apply to an agency that was co-ed when they wanted a same-sex agency. It was a general disaster. So Dcmh had the idea to start a centralized list, so everyone would fill out the same application. All the referrals would come to Dcmh, and then we would meet with all the providers once a week, go over the applications, and assign based on the most appropriate agency. So that way we could look at each referral and see, if someone needed to live outside of Yonkers because their people, places, and things were there. They needed to live in another community. We could assign to an agency that was outside of Yonkers. If someone had lived with Search for Change in the past, it didn't go well, they needed a different agency, we could assign based on that. So it really improved the process. It also helped us create a wait list where each agency had the same lengths of the wait list, and people weren't waiting, a month for placement at one agency and a year for placement at another. We since took over the wait list at Dcmh. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the wait list at Dcmh. I'll talk about that later. And we also had an issue before the SPOA with individuals with complex needs not necessarily getting placement as quickly as other individuals. Agencies would a lot of times say they didn't have the services that people needed in order to live successfully in the community. And so those individuals would go from agency to agency and try to find placement. So part of the purpose of the SPOA was to make sure that all the individuals with the complex needs were prioritized for placement, and to make sure that they received placement before individuals with less complex needs. So they would look at individuals who had multiple inpatient hospitalizations, individuals coming out of RPC, individuals who were homeless, and try to place those people before people who, say, were living with their parents and situations like that. So that was the birth of our priority system, which I'll also talk about. We do have an eligibility system. In order to work with the adult SPOA, you need to be 18 years old. You need to have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, or psychotic disorder, or any diagnosis that you can get SSI for. So if you get SSI for OCD and you can document that you're getting SSI for that diagnosis, you're eligible for services. We have a 5 priority system. So a lot of times people will call and they'll say, I have someone who is living in, a toxic relationship with their mother. Can they please get out? Can you move their priority? This is the way our priority system works. It's based on people's living situations, just their living situations. And other circumstances. So the priority 1 is for people who are court-ordered for treatment, people who have assisted outpatient treatment orders, and that's a New York State regulation. Those people have to be prioritized first for placement. Priority 2 is for people coming out of inpatient units, especially Rockland Psychiatric Center, people who are homeless, people who are in adult homes, and people who are in RTFs, residential treatment facilities. And a lot of that is based on guidelines from the Office of Mental Health. So some of those populations we've chosen to prioritize. Definitely the Rockland psychiatric population is a priority from the Office of Mental Health, and also the adult home population. Priority 3 is for individuals who are in the system and looking to transfer to alternate levels of care. So say someone's in the apartment treatment program and they need a community residence. We would prioritize them at priority 3 because we want to keep them in the system and make sure that they get the appropriate level of care. Priority 4 is for the person who is living in a toxic situation with her mother. She's housed. So a lot of times people will call and want to know if that person can be bumped above other people who are on the priority 4 list because that person is in a toxic situation with their mother. The reason we can't do this is because, say that person is number 500 on the list. We don't know the circumstances of the other 499 people who are on that list. So when people call us and they ask us to bump that person up, we can't prioritize that person without knowing the circumstances of everyone else on that list. We have to maintain an objective view of the list. So Jen and Monique and I get a ton of calls asking us to make subjective decisions. We really can't do that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That's something we get a lot from case management. And priority 5 is for individuals who are out of county. We do prioritize Westchester County residents over everyone else. The most intensive level of care we have is a community residence. That's staffed 24 hours a day. We have 93 community residence beds. 27 of them are for people with co-occurring disorders. It's two residences. One is in Katona and one is in Yonkers. And we have 10 beds that are for individuals with an intellectual disability and a psychiatric diagnosis. Those are not for people who are in the OPWDD system. They're for people who have a borderline intellectual functioning or a mild MR diagnosis, so they don't quite meet the criteria to be in the OPWDD system. The agencies who have these levels of care are Cluster, Human Development Services of Westchester, Rehabilitation Support Services, and Search for Change. And our CRs are located in Yonkers, Scarsdale, Larchmont, Mamaroneck, White Plains, Portchester, Thornwood, Sleepy Hollow, Mohegan Lake, and Katona. So they're all over the county. We really try to look at geographic preference, but honestly, we have such a long wait list for CR that a lot of times it really ends up being where the next opening is. Unless there's a specific reason that a geographic location is not viable. Like if someone really needs to be near a family member, they'll wait for a placement near their family member. Community residences are paid for by SSI, SSD, public assistance, and Medicaid. The rate for room and board for a community residence is $1,053. And then individuals get a PNA. So if they get SSI, they get a PNA of $176, and if they get SSD, they get $196. This makes people not want to live in CR, as you can imagine. A lot of times if they're living on their own or they're living in, people are street homeless, they don't want to go to a CR because they are getting their SSI check and they're living on that. But you know, a lot of times people need a CR, and we are able to talk to them and help them realize that this is a way to live in independent housing eventually, so they do choose the CR. CRs are billed for by Medicaid because there are services that are provided that are Medicaid billable that I'll talk about in a second. And the Medicaid billing rate varies from agency to agency. It's based on the number of licensed beds that each agency has. The Medicaid rates in Westchester vary from agency to agency, and they go from anywhere from $2,900 a month to $3,500 a month, and that's as long as 4 billable services are provided each month. They're staffed 24 hours a day. Our residences have between 8 and 15 residents. Residents are responsible for different household tasks such as cleaning, cooking, having household meetings, participating in different groups, a lot of different things that it takes to run the household in a peaceful way. They must be in treatment, and they must have a prescriber. Treatment is part of a community residence, and that helps with the Medicaid billing. And these are licensed by the Office of Mental Health. Everyone who lives in a community residence must have an authorization for restorative services. This is the form that's on the SPOA application in the back that needs to be filled out by a physician and have a license number. It's basically a prescription for licensed housing. It says that this person needs to live in licensed housing so they can be restored to a level of functioning that helps them live independently. So it's saying that they need the services that are provided in a community residence. Those services can consist of assertiveness training, community integration training, daily living skills, health services, med management, parenting training, rehab counseling, skill development services, socialization, substance abuse services, and symptom management. And that has to be renewed every 6 months. The apartment treatment program is the next step up from the community residence. That's a scattered site apartment in the community, and it generally has 2 to 3 residents. These apartments are already existing, so when someone gets referred to the apartment treatment program, a lot of times they ask if they can find their own apartment, but these apartments are already located because they have to be licensed by the Office of Mental Health, so you can't go look for your own treatment apartment. You are matched up with a roommate. You can meet the roommate and see if you like the roommate. But a lot of times, like I said, we have so many people waiting that people end up matching up with whatever they get referred for and try to, just make it work. The agencies that have treatment apartment are Cluster, Human Development Services of Westchester, Rehabilitation Support Services, Search for Change, and the Mental Health Association. What does that say? I can't read that. Oh, the visits. Thank you. The visits for the apartment treatment program vary based on need. So some people get visited 3 times a week. Some people get visited 1 time a week. It's based on how the individuals in the apartment are doing, how much support they need, how their goals are going. Sometimes people are clustered in different geographic locations that can make the visits more geographically convenient. A lot of times agencies will cluster their apartment treatment programs around their community residences, and that way they can do med management. Because a lot of times the barrier for moving someone from a community residence to an apartment treatment program is med management. We see that with apartment treatment and with supported housing. A lot of times there are people who can do everything on their own and do not need any services other than the fact that their meds, they're not going to remember to take their meds. So as long as we can get someone med management and the people are interested in having med management services, people can move into more independent housing and are interested in that. So a lot of the apartment treatment programs are clustered around community residences. Individuals in apartment treatment programs split up the household tasks and chores, and they're still required to have household meetings, to have treatment provider and a prescriber, and to have the authorization for restorative services. They're licensed by the Office of Mental Health as well. I went over that. The difference between the authorization for restorative services for apartment treatment and CR is that it only has to be renewed annually for the apartment treatment, and the financials for the apartment treatment and the CR are the same. Single room occupancy. We have 1 single room occupancy in the whole county. There are 8 beds. Single room occupancy is a lot of times the most appropriate level of care for people. This is a big house. It has 8 bedrooms. There are 4 male rooms on the first floor. There are 4 female rooms on the top floor. A lot of times people need to have someone on site, need some support, need to have their own room, don't want to interact with people, but don't want any rules and regulations of living in a program where they have to do things. So a lot of times it's the most appropriate level of care for people. The problem is that in Westchester, no town in Westchester wants to open a building that houses our clients. So it's been impossible for us to find places that we can open a new SRO. We've had funding for SROs. We haven't been able to find a location. So we continue to have only 1 SRO for 8 people. It's run by WRO. There's an office on site. It's staffed from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. They share a kitchen and a bathroom. There's a cleaning service that comes and cleans it. It's funded a lot like supported housing. It's 30% of your income, which can come from SSI, SSD, public assistance, earned income, or veterans benefits, and it is not Medicaid billable. The Rental Assistance Program. The Rental Assistance Program is funded through the Office of Housing and Urban Development, and anyone who's eligible for it has to meet the Office of Housing and Urban Development's definition of homelessness, which is different from what a lot of people think of as homeless. We get a lot of calls from people who are homeless. They don't have their own apartment. They're staying on the couch at someone's house. They're couch to couch with friends. They don't have anywhere specific to lay their head at night. HUD doesn't consider those people homeless. HUD considers people homeless if they're in an emergency shelter or if they're sleeping in a place not meant for human habitation, like a car, an abandoned building, a bench. They have a very strict definition of homelessness, and it's federal guidelines, and we can't bend those. So even if the person you're working with doesn't technically have a, defined place to stay every night, they're not going to meet the criteria for the rental assistance program. But we will prioritize them as a priority 2 on our supported housing list. We have 392 of those beds. They're with Human Development Services of Westchester, Lifting Up Westchester, the Guidance Center, the Mental Health Association, and WestHab. We do have family housing through the rental assistance program. This is the only program that we have family housing through. It's just the only program that has funding that allows for us to house multiple people. You pay 30% of your income for it. Again, that's SSI, SSD, public assistance, earned income, and veterans benefits. I do want to say that veterans are prioritized for the rental assistance program. We do try to house veterans, and I think that it's part of our application that we prioritize veterans for the housing in this program. People who are in the program get supportive services and monthly visits from their care managers, and there are care managers who come along with the program. And it's not Medicaid billable. The coordinated entry system oversees the referrals for the rental assistance program, so the referral process is not actually overseen by Dcmh at the beginning. Anyone who is in placement in the homeless shelter ends up on the list for the rental assistance program, but that list is overseen by someone at the Department of Social Services. So to be on that list, you need to be in the shelter system. You need to have what's called a comprehensive homeless assessment tool completed. That's a form that lists different things that make someone vulnerable in the community. It describes different risk factors that, basically say how at risk someone is in the community if they don't get housed. So that wait list for the rental assistance program goes by how long someone has been in the shelter and what their score is on that chat. So the higher the score and the longer the amount of time in the shelter, the algorithm will tag those people. We tag the people who have a SPOA and indicate that they're appropriate for our services, and then we get their referrals as we have openings. Scattered site supportive housing. This is what everyone really wants to have. This is our biggest wait list. The agencies who have scattered site supportive housing are Cluster, Community Housing Innovations, Human Development Services of Westchester, the Mental Health Association, St. Vincent's, Search for Change, the Guidance Center, WestHab, and WRO. We have 890 supported housing beds. People in supported housing have at least a monthly contact. They have to have a support plan. Part of the requirements for supported housing are participating in support services. So a lot of times if you have someone in supported housing and they're looking at a discharge, it'll be because they are not participating in their support plan or they are not paying rent. It's just part of the guidelines that they receive the supportive services. You don't have to need the stipend to participate in supported housing, you do have to need the support services because it's a program for people with a psychiatric diagnosis who need support services, not just a rental assistance program. It goes by 30% of your income. I've gone over what that is. It's not Medicaid billable at this time, but it's currently working its way through the Office of Mental Health and OMEG to become Medicaid billable. That means that the services provided in the supported housing program will eventually be billable through Medicaid, and that will allow agencies to bill Medicaid for their services, which will give a little more funding to the supported housing program, which is terribly, terribly underfunded. When you are working with individuals who are in the supported housing program and they get, they receive a voucher, for lack of a better word, and are told they can look for an apartment, a lot of times it's very disappointing the amount of money they have to look for an apartment. That's because there is no money in supported housing to look for an apartment. It's not that the agency is, trying to be stingy or anything like that. It's just that there's very little money in those grants from the Office of Mental Health. We do not have family housing in the supported housing program. We have one agency that has families left over that have been grandfathered in, but we have no family housing moving forward. Our wait lists. As of right now, we have 75 people waiting for community residence, 45 waiting for co-occurring community residence, 4 waiting for the IDDD community residence, 20 waiting for SRO, 65 waiting for ATP, and 1,230 waiting for supported housing. I'm going to go over care management, which I probably don't need to go over, but I'm just going to. This is a presentation for everybody, so I'm going to go over it really quickly. One of the types of care management we have is Reinvestment, which is a care management program that's funded through money that came down to us through the closing of state hospitals. It's not Medicaid billable, so this is for people who either their Medicaid is not active and we're working to activate it, or they are working, or they have Medicare or VA benefits, whatever it is, they don't have Medicaid. So it's not Medicaid billable. The agencies that have this program are Choice, Human Development Services of Westchester, Phelps, St. Joe's, and St. Vincent's. There are no service dollars attached to this program. We do have a program that Adam administers called the Community Support Services Grant that has very small amount of money. I'm not shouting you out, Adam. A very small amount of money that can be used for pretty specific needs to provide to people if they, in lieu of service dollars. The caseloads for this program are between 20 and 35. It depends on your contract. We also have homeless outreach, which is specifically for the homeless population, as the name implies. The 2 agencies who have this are Choice and Human Development Services of Westchester. I know different agencies have designated care managers to work with the homeless outreach population, but as far as our contracting goes, these are the 2 agencies that are contracted for homeless outreach. This is not Medicaid billable. We ask for at least 3 visits monthly because it's a more intense program for people who are homeless, and the caseload is between 15 and 20. We have an advocacy program through Choice, which is not Medicaid billable. It's for concrete immediate needs, and it's short term. So this is for someone who comes in and says, my SSI was turned down, I need to get an appeal letter and my psychiatrist won't write it, something like that. It's for an immediate need that is not something that's going to continue, that they need case management for. Health homes. Health homes were implemented in 2011. That's when the Department of Health took over care management from the Office of Mental Health. It's also when all of the guidelines for case management changed from the 2 visits and 4 visits a month to the monthly contacts and the necessary quarterly visit. So the guidelines for the visits decreased a lot. The agencies that have health home care management are Choice, the Mental Health Association, HDSW, Montefiore, Phelps, RPC, St. Joe's, and St. Vincent's. There are some slots in the health homes that are considered legacy. How that works is that every agency had a certain number of slots before the Department of Health took over. So say your agency, when the Department of Health came in, had 20 spots that were through the Office of Mental Health. Those spots have to be reserved for individuals with serious mental illness, because a lot of times the people in the health home don't meet the criteria for serious mental illness. They have 2 chronic conditions, but they're not necessarily an SMI diagnosis. So they can't go into one of those 20 slots. Those slots have to be for people with serious mental illness that come through the SPOA. You work with buckets of activity. You guys know all that. Health Home Plus was started in 2014. First, it started for AOT. I think now it's also for, then it started for people with HIV, and now it's for a very broad population. The SPOA's role in this is that we can approve people we can use our clinical discretion to approve people. If you have anyone you're working with who you feel needs Health Home Plus, but they don't meet any of the criteria, you can always contact me. What I do is generally get a good clinical picture of the person. I look them up in psyches. I make sure that they're eligible. And then I'll do an approval or a disapproval, but usually an approval for the Health Home Plus level of care. There are strict experience regulations for Health Home Plus, limited caseloads, and 4 contacts a month are required. We also have a mobile outreach team and a transitional outreach program. Those are through Search for Change. They were implemented in 2015. Combined, they have a team leader, an LPN, a case manager, a social worker, and a peer. What they do is they connect with people when they're in Rockland Psychiatric Center and help transition them into the community. So they don't connect when the person is discharged. They create a relationship while the person is inpatient and then help them transition into the community. So they already have something familiar when they leave the hospital, because a lot of times we have people who are leaving the hospital and are coming out cold, and we're trying to eliminate that. So instead of just doing, a warm handoff where you meet someone the day you get out of the hospital, you have someone that you've known for a few months when you get out of the hospital. We also have peer self-help. Adam went over peer self-help. This is a specific program that also started in 2015. It's through Choice and MHA. They also transition starting at Rockland, and the caseload is 20. We also have the Assertive Community Treatment Team. We have 5 of these in the county. They're through Montefiore, St. Vincent's, the Guidance Center, the Mental Health Association, and Westchester Medical Center. They started in Westchester in 2003. They're for people with frequent hospitalizations and a lack of connection with transitional treatment. So we're looking at people who have tried traditional treatment and it has not worked, and they've subsequently ended up in the hospital. ACT is about meeting people where they're at, even though I hate that phrase, and trying to find out what will help them engage in treatment and what appeals to them. A lot of times people with ACT are not willing to work with ACT in the beginning, and ACT continues to try and reach out to them until they find, that the person, they find a way to reach the person. That's ACT's job. They're required to do a minimum of 6 visits monthly, and the caseload is 68 clients. They have daily meetings to talk about everyone on the caseload, so the whole team is involved and they know everything that's going on. It's a person-centered and culturally competent program, and it is Medicaid billable. The team consists of a team leader, a .68 FTE psychiatrist, a nurse, a program assistant, an employment specialist, a family specialist, a substance abuse specialist, and a peer is strongly recommended. though not required. We do encourage our teams to have a peer. ACT direct services include service planning and coordination, integrated treatment for substance use, family life and social relationships, housing, school and training opportunities, wellness self-management, relapse prevention, problem solving, daily activities, work opportunities, health, medication support, money management entitlements, empowerment, and self-help. And the reason that there are so many of those that I just had to read is because we're trying to capture a broad audience. They want to be able to find something that will appeal to everybody. It's also part of the reason that they have a large team. A lot of times someone on the ACT team will connect with one member more than the others, so that person will be their primary contact. So even though they'll see more than one member on the team, someone never just sees one member on the team, they will have a primary contact that's usually their chart review person, and then they'll work on whatever that person's specialty is. Like if it's the employment specialist, they'll work on employment, and then they'll see the psychiatrist and the nurse also. We also have a respite program. Respite is to prevent unnecessary hospitalizations. It's a maximum use of 14 days annually. You must have a discharge plan to go into respite. Your discharge plan cannot be, this person doesn't have housing, they need somewhere to stay. Respite is only funded for 14 days annually, and after that, the person will be living somewhere and an agency will not be paid for them, and they will have someone in their CR out of compliance with the New York State regulations. That's why we can't house someone who is homeless. All apologies. Utilizes temporarily unoccupied beds in community residences. So say someone is in the hospital, we can use their unoccupied bed to respite someone. And this is administered by the Mental Health Association. That's our presentation. I put up the single point of access staff. There's Monique Scott, she's our staff assistant. Monique, give a wave. She's in the second row. Jennifer Alves, she's in the front row. And me. We do have a great staff, they're super helpful, so feel free to give them or myself a call anytime. Thanks.
Okay, I can't. We are going to talk about assisted outpatient treatment for a little bit, also known as Kendra's Law. Has anyone heard of AOT or Kendra's Law? Just a few of you? Okay. Is that Todd up there? Oh, hi, guys. I'm sorry, the masks are deceiving. I can't really tell who anybody is. All right, so assisted outpatient treatment came into place. It's a New York State law after Kendra Webdale was pushed in front of a New York City subway in 1999 by an individual who was medication and treatment non-compliant, long history of mental illness, and was violent and pushed her in front of the subway, and she died. So AOT, also known as Kendra's Law, came after that unfortunate incident. So in Westchester County, we have about a population of 1 million. We currently have about 150 AOT orders. So some of you will work with people on AOT, some of you won't. Some of you may have a caseload where somebody could benefit from it, so it's important for you to have a little bit of an understanding about AOT, so that's what we're going to do right now. So AOT is not a criminal court matter, it's a civil court matter, so it has nothing to do with anyone's criminal history, criminal court. It's a civil court in the Westchester Supreme Court, and this is going to mandate them to outpatient treatment and medication, possibly SPOA housing for a period of 1 year. All right, so I'm going to show you what an AOT treatment plan looks like. Is Annette back there? Okay. Hi, Annette. All right, so this is the New York State. I'm sorry? Can we make it larger? Probably not, but we are going to be sending them to you guys, okay? So all the slides you'll get in your email. Dash, we can do that, right? Yeah, okay. So this is the Office of Mental Health.
That's big.
That's better, Annette, thank you. The New York State Office of Mental Health uses this generic AOT treatment plan for everyone across the state. So if you have someone on AOT, this is what you're gonna see. The only exception to this rule is the boroughs. The boroughs have a very specific and very different looking AOT order that they just use for the boroughs. So we're not gonna go into detail on this, but I wanted to just make sure that you guys see it. So this letter D is called the category of services, and this is where your name's gonna be. Where you work, your name, and what you're gonna be doing with them. As per the AOT law, case managers and ACT teams have to meet with people at least 4 times a month, as per the law. So you're going to be, it's gonna be stating that in the category of services. Sometimes we use your supervisor's names here. If we have a long-standing case manager who's been here for a while, we'll put that person's name in there. But definitely your supervisor, where you work, your address, your phone, and it's gonna say that they're gonna meet with you at least 4 times a month because that's what it has to say as per the law. We're also gonna include outpatient treatment here. PROS, CDT, clinic, whatever it is that they're doing. We're also gonna include the individual therapy in any sort of housing, whether they are living at home with mom and dad, we're gonna add their name, their phone number, where they're living. If they're in a shelter, we're gonna add that information there. You guys need to know where these people are gonna be, so we're gonna try to put in as much information as we can here. This is the medication worksheet. This is what a lot of people push for AOT, is the injectable medication. So that's the only way we can ensure that somebody is medicated is with the injectable medication. So that's gonna be here. You're gonna see medication. It's gonna give a little bit more information about that medication. You're gonna see how it's administered, and you're gonna see contingencies. This is also a really important step for our outpatient doctors. If we have a Haldol standing medication, we're gonna list a few other contingency meds that the person may try with the doctor, just so we don't have to go back to court. So we also include alcohol and substance abuse treatment. Does it make a difference? Probably not. We know that the substance abuse programs are licensed under a different umbrella than our OMH licensed outpatient programs, and it's just different law. So we have worked really closely with a handful of outpatient substance abuse providers in Westchester. That's who we're constantly referring to. Phelps ATS, we have St. Vincent's Oars, we have, those are the ones that we're usually working with, probably because they have the mental health and substance abuse component in their program. Annette, can you go to the next one, please? All right, so for people that have a person on AOT on their caseload, you have to submit a weekly report. It's annoying, I know, but that's what is required from the Office of Mental Health. This is just, this is what the weekly report looks like. You're just gonna give me your information, a little bit. Is that fuzzy or is it just me? Okay. It's gonna give me a little bit of information on how your week went, all right? We wanna know if you saw them, if they canceled on you, if they made it to their treatment appointment, if they've been adherent with their medication, and that could be they told you or they got an injection. However it was administered, you're gonna document it here. At the bottom, you'll see a description of the person's presentation, how they engaged with you. This is probably the most important piece of this paper. You're gonna know the people you're working with better than anybody because you're gonna see them the most. So if you think, person doesn't really look good this week, they didn't take a shower, I looked in the fridge, there's no food, something's going on. This is gonna alert us to that, and we're gonna keep a real close eye on that. If someone is fancy every time you see them, dolled up, makeup, looks impeccable, you see them a few times and they don't look that way, something's probably going on. So that's really the most important piece to this form. If you think something warrants my immediate attention, because I do read all of these, I have to read 150 of them a week, call me, because I don't always get to them the second you send them in. So if something really is going on, the best way is to call me and tell me, please. Annette, can we have the significant event report? So another piece of working with someone on AOT is a significant event report. This is something that's also mandated by the law, and it's something that I have to send to the Office of Mental Health. So this is the form you're going to send me in a significant event. And the form is going to list exactly what warrants this form to be sent in case you can't read it, because I can't. We'll just go through a few. Obviously, any sort of criminal activity, arrest, even if it's just a police contact, ticket, and release, you have to do one of these forms. If they are a danger to themselves or others, we're going to do this form. Any sort of noncompliance with the mandated treatment, that could be even one missed outpatient appointment. It can be annoying and time-consuming, yes, for you to continue to do it, but that's what we're supposed to do. If the person has stable housing and they suddenly lose that, we want to know about that. Any sort of psychiatric admission or presentation to an emergency room, even if it's not psychiatric. If the individual you're working with has to go to the ER for a medical reason, that warrants a significant event report. All right, so just keep that in mind. A brief description of what's going on. Some people will just send me their progress note. Some people will send me their internal note. That's fine. I will just forward that along to OMH. So how your specific agency does it is fine with me. And it's just going to ask you a few more questions on who you've told, if there's parole, probation, mom, dad, housing, me, and then the recommended action. Whether the person was admitted, if we need to have any sort of treatment team meeting. So that's the significant event. A few of you here have done significant events. I won't call you out on them, but you can probably agree with me that they are time-consuming and they are annoying. So I will do the best I can to get them, processed and sent as soon as we can. All right, so the AOT is the court order. A step down from the court order is the enhanced service package, also known as ESP. This is something that we can do with an individual if they're maybe not quite meeting criteria for AOT, or you don't think AOT would benefit them. I mean, look, we have certain criteria for AOT. They have to be at least 18. They have to have a history of at least 2 inpatient admissions in the past 3 years, or 1 act of violence or threat of act toward themselves or others in 4 years. We have to meet criteria. So if somebody doesn't meet one of those 7 criteria, an enhanced service package may be an option for them. All right, so ESP is a verbal and written contract. It does not involve court. So they are just going over their treatment. Oh, this is hold on. Don't look at this yet. The ESP contract is something that you're just going to be writing down where they're going for treatment, where they're living, the medications that they're taking. Everything we talked about at an AOT is just going to be written on the ESP contract, all right? ESP is good for somebody who responds to written paper. If someone sees your signature on a piece of paper, if they see their signature on a piece of paper, and that is going to make a difference to how they react, ESP is for them. We all know those people that look at a piece of paper and say, what the hell is this? I don't care about this. They'll rip it up and they won't do it anyway. That's not, ESP is not for them. All right, so if you think of people on your caseload, you're gonna think of people who probably might be intimidated by a piece of paper, or it'll use that as motivation to do what they need to do. instead of weekly reporting for someone on ESP, we're going to do monthly reporting. So this is the ESP monthly report. It's not as detailed as the AOT report, but this is what we're going to ask you to tell us about someone on ESP. Do you guys have any questions on the court order or on ESP? No? Don't all scream out, you guys? Hi. Is that Lexi? I'm sorry, you guys, I can't see. Go ahead. I said, do you guys have any questions? Yeah, I'll email it to you. Yeah, and we're going to send out everything after today. Yeah, Desh will send it in an email. All right, so can we have the 960, Annette? So there's 2 forms as part of the mental hygiene law that allow us to have someone picked up by the police and brought to the closest psychiatric emergency room for the purposes of a psychiatric evaluation. As it relates to AOT, we use the 960 form. So this is the mental hygiene law 960 form. Myself and the prescribing doctor are going to sign this form. This is for someone who's been non-compliant with the court order, someone who, despite numerous outreach attempts, you're going to their home, you're going to wherever you think they are, you're trying to find them, they're missing, they're saying, I'm not coming. That's when we're going to initiate this 960 order. A lot goes into these. A lot of conversations between me, between you, between your treatment provider. The last thing we want to do is send the police to someone's home if they're not there. We don't want to send someone to the emergency room, especially during COVID, if they don't need to be there. So if we can have anyone make that connection with the person to try to get them to come in, we're going to do that. All right, so I just wanted to show you what the 960 looks like. You guys may or may not, I always include you in my emails to the police when I send these out, but you may not ever have to see these, but I thought it was important for you to see. The 945 order is going to directly affect you guys because you are one of the identified reporters of concern. All right, so it's the same section. We're talking about the mental hygiene law. This is a 945 order. This is directing the police to locate, pick up, and transport an individual to a psychiatric emergency room for the purposes of the evaluation. If you're concerned for their safety, if you're concerned that they're going to hurt someone, that's what we're going to utilize this for. If you see, and it looks a little fuzzy, but under the 945 here, you're going to see licensed physician, a licensed psychologist. Those are the people that are reporting it. On the what? Oh, I can't read that. Oh. Yes. Sorry. All right, I can't even, it's too fuzzy for me, guys, I'm sorry. But case management is somebody that can report this. You can either call the doctor, or you can call me, you can call Chris, you can call someone in my office with concerns if you think that the 945 order is warranted, okay? Obviously, we want to keep the person you're working with safe. We want to keep the community safe. So these orders are utilized often in Westchester, but we have a big population, so we are issuing a bunch of these a month. When we do issue them, we work very closely with the emergency room. We work closely with the outpatient provider. It's constant communication because, again, especially since COVID, we want to get the person in and out. We want to get the police in and out as quickly as we can. All right, so that's AOT, that's our pickup orders. We're going to talk a little bit, you can take that off, Annette. We're going to talk a little bit about hospital discharge planning. One thing that has changed significantly since the start of COVID is our inpatient teams. We've had a lot of staff turnover, so those of you who have been in the field for a while, you're used to specific social workers and case managers. They're not there anymore. So Chris and I do have a standing list of all of our inpatient teams. We have social workers' names, email addresses, and phone numbers. We're still updating it because there's been so much turnover, but we will be sure to get that out to your supervisors as soon as it's done, okay? We found that it's been extremely helpful for you guys especially, because you know when you call an inpatient unit, oh, is my so-and-so there? Oh, we can't tell you that. At least if you have the social worker or case manager, you have direct access to someone on the unit. As you start in the field a little bit longer, you're going to develop the relationships with them. They're going to know who you are, and they're obviously going to give you the information for that. So right now, I'm assuming you guys as case managers are communicating with the inpatient teams prior to discharge. Is that correct? Or are you having difficulty getting information from them? There's some head nods, but yes. Is it hard? Yeah? Okay. So we're hoping that this will help you guys tremendously, okay? Because realistically, you being able to, at the very least, have a conversation telephonically or a video call prior to them being discharged is what we would hope for. As hospitals start opening their visitor policies, you're able to go in for face-to-face visits. We have seen, and I'm sure everyone can agree, that when you make that contact with the person before they leave the hospital, they are more willing to reach out to you post-discharge. They're more willing to reach out to you if they need any help. So I think that initial contact, especially for a new client, is important.
So let me introduce myself. My name is Chris John. I'm also with the Department of Community Mental Health, and I am a social worker, and I'm the dual recovery coordinator. What does that mean? It is an OMH funded position, and my main goal is to coordinate the mental health and substance abuse programs within Westchester County with a move towards integrated care, knowing that a lot of the people that you're working with live with both a mental health and a substance use disorder. They have a co-occurring disorder, and that's what it's called. I know a lot of you are seasoned case managers in the field or maybe new, but what you need to realize is that 70% plus of the people that you engage with live with a substance use disorder. So if your eligibility criteria for your services are that they have a serious mental illness or a mental illness, don't negate the fact that they also may have other complex needs. So let me give you a little bit more of what I do as they continue to set up. So in addition to working with our service providers within Westchester County, mental health, substance abuse, I also am considered a forensic social worker. So most of my work has been in the criminal justice system, working with cops, courts, and corrections, which is what I'm going to go into with you guys a little bit. I oversee some teams called the Police Mental Health Co-Response Teams. Has anybody ever dealt with one of those teams? Or even knows what that is, right? So what does that mean? We have 3 teams in Westchester County, in White Plains, in New Rochelle, and in Yonkers. We have specially trained police officers that have went through the police academy and gone through a full 40-hour training to be considered CIT trained, crisis intervention trained. These officers are paired with staff from our department, social workers and CASACs and LMHCs, and they co-respond to people in the community who are in emotional crisis, right, or people in crisis. These officers go in with a softer, a more caring, empathetic approach, really looking at all of the issues and barriers that the person is experiencing and trying to get them the assistance and the help that they need, as opposed to a criminal arrest based on how they're presenting at that time, right, or the symptomatology. So that's one of the things that I do. So you may, like I've seen, some of you have engaged with them, but also know that they exist there. Another thing that can benefit you, since everybody's world is connected in some way to DSS, right? Have you guys been to the Department of Social Services before? Right? How many of you are traumatized by going to the Department of Social Services? All right, we will be talking about that. So I have put together in collaboration with DSS some initiatives, which I'll talk about, a care transition checklist that helps with the transition of people who are in inpatient psychiatric units being discharged back to the community, maybe undomiciled, meaning they're homeless. And it's a one-pager that helps ask some of the pertinent information to determine eligibility, so that it's an easier, faster, more streamlined process as opposed to walking in for the first time with the person, filling out the application, the 26 pages of fun, right? That was going to be one of my teasers, how many pages in a DSS application. Is it 26? It's too many, right? That's the right answer, right? So doing that, expediting it, working with specific workers there that are going to get that and hopefully get that person placed if they meet eligibility, as opposed to sitting there all day and hoping that a placement comes in at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, right? We all know the sit in DSS for hours and hours and hours. I'm going to give you the in a little bit when it comes to that and some of the collaboration. So you guys excited for me a little bit? All right. All right. So that's one of the things. But we also have a staff member. Her name is Shauna Thompson. Who knows Shauna? All right, so we know Shauna. Shauna is another one of our staff. She's placed in White Plains and in Yonkers. She sits in both of those offices, and she assists customers, because when you go to DSS, they're considered customers. She assists customers that come in and self-identify or present to have a mental illness or be, and she helps navigate the system for them, because we already know it's complex for anybody who has nothing going on. It's hard for us to even be in DSS and go through that whole process. So if you already have some other stimuli that's going on, she helps to navigate that and expedite it as well. So I oversee those 3 police mental health correspondence teams and her, our DSS liaison, but also working with many other systems such as, oh, no, it's me now? You're just gonna make me go? Okay, I guess I'm just gonna go, so that's me. I just took it over. All right, so let us kind of go into this. I kind of did want to go at the end simply because I wanted to wrap up the entire day. I have a systemic theoretical orientation, right? I understand that all these different systems interconnect in so many different ways that if you don't realize how they interconnect, it's going to be a problem for you somewhere down the road, right? Now, I'm looking for a lot more head nods and a lot more responses when it comes to, are you connecting with inpatient staff when it comes to discharging? Do it. I'm not asking you, right? I'm a former case manager. I've been a regular case manager, ICM case manager. I've been in the field directly in all settings. Let me explain to you why we're saying this and why Sarah just said that. For one, if you are just relying on a hospital social worker discharge planner to just do discharge planning, set up all of the stuff, put it on paper, and expect for that person on that unit to just go, I'm just going to smile at you, right? Secondly, you know probably with the nature of the relationship that you have with that person, what's working and what's not working in the community. You allow somebody who doesn't know that person or only has been working with that person for a week, psychiatrically stabilizing them and dealing with other co-occurring disorders, medical conditions, and complex needs that they have, and they're just putting something because of the next available appointment, but you know they have a horrible relationship with St. Vincent's. They have a horrible relationship with here. They can't just go here, and then you think that they're going to go and be successful? Absolutely not. What you need to do is you need to contact that person, be in communication with the client and the social worker discharge planner, and say, this is what is going to work. This is the preferred plan in the community. Partner with them, be a part of that team. Don't just push it off to that and say, I'm going to deal with it when they're now mine in the community and now I can bill. Stop it. Stop the madness, right? You are now going to give yourself more stress because when they're in the community, what's going to happen? You can't find them. They don't have a relationship. They didn't go to program. You're mad at said client. What did you do? You waited for somebody else to do something. Yeah, I'm coming at you guys, right? Because I'm coming at my own at this point, right? Because I consider myself to be one of you. This is the importance of what Sarah just said. This list of these social workers and discharge planners that we talked about is going to give you direct access to them. Because if you have a client that called you from a random payphone, right? On a who's had those? Come and get me. Why haven't you seen me? I don't know what they're doing over here. They're not giving me my meds and all these different things, right? Out of frustration, you don't know the number, and they say, who's the social worker? They give you a first name. Who's that? I don't have a phone number, now you're lost. We gave you a list of, if they give you a name of Kelly, and you know that this is the specific unit that this person's on, you have their number, you have their phone number, you have their extension, you have their email. You're calling, and you're asking, I know you don't know me, and they didn't sign consent, but I'm the case manager in the community you never spoke with. Can you speak with them, get consent signed, and let's do this? You see the difference in what I just said versus just letting somebody else do something, and then you're taking up the rest of the problems with their lives in the community, in a shelter, with their homes, on the block, in a treatment program, and all these different things, and wondering why things didn't go well. You guys on the same page with me right now? Okay, Sarah, you ready to take this back before I continue? Right? So please take heed of what's being said right now, and if she's asking you a question, we're asking a question, what you guys need at this point, please respond, because we're not going to know how to fix this and support you guys unless you tell us what the problems are and the barriers that you face as care managers in the community.
And that's really how we, is it on? Why we developed that, because of the feedback from you guys and your colleagues as case managers. I mean, I was a case manager once too, and it was a pain in the ass to find somebody on an inpatient unit, right? You're spending 35 minutes trying to find someone when you could obviously be doing something else with that time. So we want your experience with the inpatient teams to be seamless. So while you're out there in the field, if there's an issue, please let me know. Please let Chris know. We're going to help however we can. And sometimes that might be just having a meeting with them. But so that's the inpatient stuff. I think that we're also dealing with right now an outpatient, I'm going to call it maybe a little bit of a crisis, because we have a lot of outpatient providers who are still only meeting with people telephonically or, sorry guys, okay, or over the video, and that's just not ideal for especially our population, right? So we have people that may thrive off of that group setting, and I don't know if you guys have ever participated or observed a Zoom therapeutic group. It's not ideal, and it does nothing, in my opinion, for most of the people. So your face-to-face contact with the individuals you're working with, especially now, is so important, because they may not be getting that from their outpatient provider. It's also another reason why it's so important to have that connection with the team. If they're being seen telephonically or through a video, which not even a lot of people are doing anymore. Most people are just having the phone calls. If you're the person in the community seeing the person, you have to have access to their doctor and to their clinician. So if you guys have issues with that, we also want to know about that too, because we want to help bridge that gap and connect you directly to their outpatient providers. Okay? I think that's kind of it.
You didn't have a slide for your stuff?
No.
All right. I'm back. All right. I'm glad I'm kind of going at the end, because what I wanted to do was really wrap this up. I'm wearing a mask. Gentlemen and ladies, take note what's about to happen. If there's anything that you leave with today, take note of this. Nothing wrong with being safe and sexy. Right? I just turned this into a pocket square. Right? And it matches. So, clickety? All right. Is this the one? Okay. So, you guys know who I am right now. You guys know my passion. You know that I'm coming with a lot of very pertinent, direct information that's going to be able to support you in the work that you're doing. So I have a systems theoretical perspective, and I want you guys to understand what this means for you, because you all are working in multiple systems. So understand how they all connect, right? So care management is a complex practice requiring working with systems of many sizes, from individuals all the way to the larger systems, families, groups, organizations, and community, right? By the way, like I said, I'm a social worker, so I'm going to be social working the hell out of you right now. Understanding of systems helps the care manager and you guys attend to and understand the dynamic interactions among the many biological and social systems that affect a person's wellness and recovery. A lot of words that maybe means nothing to you because it's just on a PowerPoint slide. We're gonna send it to you, and you're like, okay, there's things that I know. I know this. Why is this guy talking to me, and why is this important? All right. So, you know this client. Who is this guy? Thank you, come on. Yes, that's Mr. Operation, right? You guys are dealing with somebody that has a lot of different broken systems and things that's going on that you have to very delicately navigate to make sure that that person is safe, right? And there's all these things that you have to navigate, right? Here we go. You have the mental health system, you have substance abuse, you have DSS, medical, hospital, jail and prisons, probation, housing, parole, families, the IDD system, it's intellectual and developmental disability system, the community. All of those, any one of those things alone can be a major issue and problem to navigate. Once one person has all of these different things intersecting at the same time, you have just compounded the problem, right? That you now, as a case manager, have to connect all of these things. Guess what? It doesn't end there, right? Because all of those separate systems that you are all connected to for that client all connect to. And if you don't understand how they all connect with each other, you're going to run into those barriers, right? So if I now, oh, there is a pointer.
I don't know how to use these things.
It's a red
Chris.
thing.
I don't know.
Red thing, pointer. So you now are working with somebody that, we just talked about hospital discharges, right? And somebody needing to go back to the community and engage in outpatient treatment of some sort, mental health, substance abuse, anything else. What could be a barrier? Throw this at me. I teach and I own a college. I am interactive. If you guys don't talk at me, I'm going to throw something at you. Resistance. Language. Language barriers. Resistance. I don't want to do this. Well, what about system stuff? Huh? Availability. Consent. Financial. You want somebody to go to a mental health treatment program, do they have the benefits? Is there Medicaid in place? Have you ever run into that where, okay, we have these things set up and they only got Medicaid? Where do you now have to start? You have to go to DSS. Did we not just talk about the trauma of DSS? Right? Did we not talk about how the process is and how long that can take? And as you're going through that process, guess what? That person is not in a treatment program. They're not getting their psychotropic medications. They have to get to that treatment program first, see a therapist, wait probably 30 days before they even get an appointment with a psychiatrist, all this time potentially decompensating. Now they're acting out in the community because their symptomatology has now increased, right? So now they're probably engaging with the teams that I supervise, so police mental health co-response teams, and now they're engaging with law enforcement, probably going to jail or prison, right? Because of those behaviors, and now you have to understand what the jail and prison community and culture and everything's like and have to navigate that as well. Right? So they go to jail, unfortunately, right? And they come out because of the crime, and now they end up on probation. Right? Now you have to understand probation and the conditions that they have to face and deal with during that time and help them fulfill the requirements of and the conditions of probation while navigating DSS, while navigating connecting them to a mental health treatment program and connecting them there, while trying to get them manage their medication. Maybe if they're in a shelter, they're dealing with now, or not in a shelter, housing issues. So now you're trying to find a transient person who may be in a drop-in, a former shelter, or street homeless. Do you understand and even know that process and what's happening for them? What are the stressors going on for them? Now do you see why Mr. Operations' face looks like that? It is not the game. This is telling true life. And guess what? A lot of your faces actually look like that when you have to think about all the things that the person is connected to. My important message for all of you right now in this conversation is that you need to be the connection for all of these things. Don't deal with only the presenting problem that's in front of you, right? Fortunately, Dash and I, just this week, was it this week? It was this week, dealt with a client who had a lot of complex needs, right? And we had to have a sit down with him and his family. And we had to, somebody that's living with a serious mental illness, right? But we also had to not only deal with him, we had to educate him about all of this, but also educate The family who was grossly misinformed about what things are supposed to be. Why isn't my son getting this? Why can't he just have access to that? Everything is illegal. No. Maybe you just don't understand the fact that this is you have to determine eligibility for that. Maybe your son's substance use or mental health. Maybe it's a medical condition. Maybe there's other barriers that's being there. So you are educators as care managers, right? You have to educate all of these different systems, and you have to understand the systems and how they interact. Because where one fails, the whole system can crash, right? So you are that connection. So think about everything we talked about with Desh when it comes to all of the housing and the case management stuff, all of the peer stuff, all of the networks that I walked into, and Annette was talking about with using our geo mapping of looking for services, all of the stuff that Sarah's talking about with AOT and ACT and how those all interconnect so that this person, Mr. Operation, can be successful, right? So you guys understand where I'm going with this and why I have such a passion. Do not just focus on that one thing that's being presented in front of that person. All right. Let me traumatize you guys for 1 second. Boom. I'm getting off. All right? Let me do it again. Wait, I can't go back. You guys know that, right? The 26-pager, right? That's just absolutely fun to fill out. And you go to DSS and you can give it to the front desk, and then they give it back to you with a bunch of highlights. Oh, I'm touching nerves. All of the highlights of the things that you got wrong and that you missed, because if you don't do it right, then the application is gone into the abyss until you get it completely, perfectly right, to then determine eligibility, which then takes about 45 days, right? You need to understand this. You need to, if it's within your ability, go with that person to the social services. If your conversation with clients are, you need Medicaid and you need benefits and you need to go to DSS and fill it out and let me know how that goes, that's not case management. That is not case management. And if the person does not fill it out right, even knowing you don't fill it out right and it comes back with yellow highlights, what are you expecting? People with language barriers or intellectual disabilities or symptomatology that they're facing with and frustration and anger, and now you want them to fill out 26 pages that we with degrees can't fill out. Say that one more time? I can't hear you clearly. Oh, the stigma. Oh, stigma associated with social welfare too, that those people, right? That's connected and with the language and everything else, and clearly, we should be going into diversity and issues as it relates to that and how people are perceived when they're walking into the door, right? All of that is happening. All of that's the trauma that people are experiencing and facing as you're dealing with it. And you have to be in the center of all of those 26 pages and that entire experience, now with plexiglass in front of them, right? So here's one of the things that Sarah touched on when it comes to hospital discharge. Has anybody seen or heard of this care transition checklist before? I got one head nod. Okay, let me explain care transition checklist, which I developed in conjunction with the Department of Social Services. This came about in 2017, and it was specifically designed for inpatient psychiatric unit discharge planning of people who are homeless and having to go to DSS to apply for shelter placement. Because what we realized, the hospitals were discharging people who were undomiciled and said, go to DSS and apply for shelter placement. We already talked about what that's like, right? Sometimes people do not get placed, they can't navigate, they never make it to point B, right, in a lot of ways. So we mutually developed this checklist, which I'm going to go through because it's good for you to understand even some of the basic stuff that DSS asks for to help determine eligibility for any benefits. So even though this is typically used by inpatient staff, I want you to have it and understand it and even keep it with you and fill it out as you're working with somebody, especially that might require DSS services because they're gonna ask all of these same questions anyway. Now you just have it done, right? All right. So this was the goal. I'm not gonna read through it. Again, it helps to facilitate placement. So I'm going from the top all the way down to the bottom of the list. So I made it a little bigger. Can everybody see it somewhat clearly? Okay. So, care transition checklist. Clearly you're putting the name, the date of birth, social security number, marital status, male, female, transgender. We are equal opportunity for everybody. Make sure the language of your stuff and the way you're respecting people is appropriate. Okay? So then you're going to ask that client that you're working with for what type of ID do they have. You know when you go to DSS, they always ask, do you have a birth certificate? Do you have a social security card? Do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have that? If you are not prepared in having that conversation with that client, they're going to say, we don't know who you are. You're not getting anything. First, yellow highlight. Right? Get that straight. Talk to your client. Ask them what do they have. So put it down there. Yes, no, birth certificate, military, immigration, social security card, DMV license, prison. Because you know, does everybody know that if you are released from a prison, you get a prison ID? If you're released from the Westchester County Jail, you get good luck. Right? You don't get discharged with an ID. Because I also worked at the Westchester County Jail as a pre-release counselor, so I'm giving you all sides. Right? What we used to do and what they continue to do to this day is we'll take the jail ID, they have an ID when they're in jail, we'll put it on a piece of paper, we will make a copy and say that this is you, and discharge the person. DSS will accept it, yes, depending on who you get. Am I giving real talk? Depending on who you get, right? This is not real ID, I can't accept this, get me something official. Go to DMV, do something else. Boom. But again, there's still a relationship that we're building. So, or reduced fare card, does anybody even still do that? Going to the county center and they can get a reduced fare card where they can go on buses and trains at a reduced fare. County center. Get the form, have the psychiatrist fill it out, sign it, put their name, go to county center, it's like $3 to get it, and they have a picture ID that they can use. Gave you a nugget right there, right? So, here's the next one, current address and last known address. Why is that important? You think it's basic. Why is address important? For mail. And what was the other thing? DSS tracks the addresses, but why? We're not going to give you money unless we know your hours. Am I not speaking the truth, right? If you don't belong to Westchester County, right, they're not considered fiscally responsible for you. Right? So what they're going to ask you to do is give your address, show that you live here in Westchester County, then you can truly apply for benefits. If you come from another state or another county, it's okay, you need to go back to that county and you need to apply. Or if you have other benefits in that other county which they're going to be checking, you need to go close that out first before you come and apply with us. Simple, you think? One of the most important things that they're doing, making sure that they are fiscally responsible for the client that you're dealing with. Ask those questions. Where do you live? Where have you last lived? What was the address you gave to DSS last? Right? Because that's what's most important. All of these preventative, kind of easy questions you need to start asking. And then which DSS office they last applied at. Another simple thing. We're talking about Westchester County. All DSS should be all DSS. Is all DSS all DSS? We know this, right? Each DSS is responsible for specific catchment areas. You go to Yonkers, but you had your last address in Peekskill, they're going to say go to Peekskill DSS and apply. So you need to know where to direct your client, because if they don't have the money for transportation and you have them at 68 Palisades, what's 68 Palisades? Case managers, what's 68 Palisades? The drop-in shelter through the YWCA. You guys should know this, it's like the back of your hand. 86 East Post Road, all of these addresses of where these shelters are, right? Because you need to understand how you're directing and moving with your clients. Simple checkoff, DSS is looking at it and saying, how can I help or how can I not help? You are a case manager, you are making the connection for a client who doesn't truly understand the system. Next portion of this one-pager. So you have the last services. If you have the Medicaid, yes or no, you can put their SIN number, right? Client identification number, if anybody never knew what SIN meant, right? Which is the 2 letters, 5 numbers, and a letter, right? That's the SIN number. SNAP, if they get it, which is food stamps, supplemental nutritional assistance program, if they receive any temporary assistance. The last shelter that they might have gone to, you know, some of them are just straight up formal shelters, and some are a mixed shelter drop-in, and some are just drop-ins. The hospital of discharge. So if they're being discharged from a hospital and you're working with them as you're expected to, right? Ensure that the person that you're working with at the discharge planner is filling out the hospital, the date they got admitted and discharged. You know how important that is. If you worked with anybody that just came out of a hospital and want to say, where have you been? Do you have the discharge papers? You have clients that you've been working with, as soon as they get discharged, they take that paper and they rip it up. There's no more proof. Right? Now they have to call back to the hospitals and do all this verification, but if this is done ahead of time and sent to DSS, at least they know the hospital they need to call back, because sometimes clients don't even know the name of the hospital, they don't know the date they were admitted, they don't even know the date they discharged, because it's not oriented times 3, they don't know the date and the time and the year and the president. Simple, but yet complicated and necessary. Then you're checking off all of the needs that a person might need: mental health, substance abuse, developmental disability, any medical, anything else. Helps you to understand, helps DSS to understand how they need to direct that person. Next part, jails and prisons. So if you're working with somebody that's being discharged from a jail and a prison, or a prison, you put that there, the date they got booked, they got released, similar to when they're from a hospital. Admission date, release date, very important. Contact, if you're on probation and parole, you put that probation and parole officer's name and their telephone number. Here's your accountability. You just did a whole bunch of DSS stuff. You don't stop there. You need to make sure that your clients are completely connected to everything. So if you're the case manager, put your name there and put your number. Make sure people can contact you in case something happens. If there's a SPOA application, make sure you put that yes, no, if no, and they need it, do it. Don't, hey, go to 112 or call Edwards and get a SPOA application and submit it and let me know how that goes and what housing list and case management. I'm just going to pause and stare at you if you're one of those. Right? You need to make the connections. Medication Grant Program. Anybody know what that is? The Mgp Program. Okay. Yes. In what way? How is it specific? Important? Okay. So, if somebody is being treated psychiatrically and being prescribed psychotropic medications in a jail or in a hospital, we already know that if they don't have Medicaid, it's going to be a process for them to get Medicaid, to go to a psychiatrist to be able to get all of that infilled, which can take probably 2 months, right? What the Medication Grant Program does is it's a state program for people who are being discharged that it will pay for only psychotropic medications. It can be done prior to discharge, but only up to 7 days post-discharge or release from a facility. And it's a little red and white card that will allow that person to only fill their psychotropic medications until their Medicaid becomes active. It's important for you to know that when you have clients who are discharged and don't have Medicaid and have medications that need to be refilled, that this is an option for them. Medication Grant Program. Joanna Young in our office is one of those people that completes that. Up to 7 days post-discharge or release, you can get an MGP card. If there's AOT that Desh and Sarah was talking about, and ACT teams, make sure everybody knows how to make contact. SOAR, anybody here SOAR trained? Okay, we got one SOAR trained person. I'm the local lead in Westchester County for SOAR. SOAR stands for SSI, SSDI, Outreach, Access, and Recovery. I'm only going to give you a teaser, as I promised Desh, because it's going to come December? December. Did they get that notice for that yet? They're all signed up for it. So everybody signed up for a December training where it's going to be talking about SOAR as one of those things. I'm coming back, and I'm talking about SOAR, right? SOAR is a SAMHSA. I'm going to go right to here really quickly and then jump back out. SOAR is a SSI, SSDI, Outreach, Access, and Recovery, funded by SAMHSA. It's a national program. All of our states have it. And it helps people who are at homeless or at risk of homelessness and live with a serious mental illness, medical condition, substance use disorder, co-occurring disorder, to expedite their SSI, SSDI application if you know how to do it. It's a website. You can do an online course. If you need CEUs, it gives you 12 CEUs for us social workers and LMHCs and all those other fun letters that we like to have, right, behind our names. And it's for adults and for children as well. So if you work with children, also get SSI, SSDI. It's great training for you to get, and it helps you to do it. For states that actually take this on, they get SSI, SSDI applications processed within 30 to 60 days. Not the, oh, you need to get your first denial and then reappeal all that stuff that we like to think it is. If you actually know what to provide and make the certain connections, you can get that done. December, we're going to be talking about that. Until that happens, if you want to take a look at the website, soarworks.proinc.com. If my email signature, if we can add it, we can send it out the link to. You can pre-take it. We can have more of a conversation in December about it. Going back, that was my teaser. I just went through this one page, right? So that you can understand how to fill it out and being able to facilitate an application. I'm going to go quickly through the next stuff. I know I'm talking a lot.
How much time do you think they are going to be saving by doing this form at DSS? Hours?
Hours.
Hours.
Hours, because if you can do this and you have the information already, right? Or you can talk to DSS workers, the same way that we talked about with the hospital discharge, with making connections to the hospital staff. I've created a list of DSS staff that you can let them know, hey, we have the situation, we're gonna come in, here's the information, you let me know, you do your check already to see if they have active cases, SNAP, if they belong to Westchester County or not, tell me what I need to do, tell me what I need to bring, get this done before 12, before they go on lunch for 2 hours. So I'm letting you know I know what I'm talking about, right? I'm giving you all of the little, so these guys. So has anybody heard of the sequential intercept model? Okay, so I'm going to just quickly go through this because I know that we're running out of time. I want to leave questions and answer for everybody to ask everything that we just did. So this is a model to show that for you, this applies to you as well, where a person who's living with a mental illness can touch different intercepts or areas of the criminal justice system. There's 5 intercepts. Hopefully we are all intercept 0, which is the prevention, where nobody has to actually engage with the criminal justice system in any way, because we're doing an excellent job, but people still do, right? So you have the intercept 1, which is law enforcement. You have intercept 2, right, which is initial detention in a local lockup. And then you're kind of going into the jails and the courts. And then you have the re-entry, probation and parole, probation, jail re-entry programs, and you have parole, so community supervision. Know that these are all areas where if somebody has criminal justice involvement, you also need to be involved, right? You need to connect with that person. You have to help them navigate going to court. What's the court dates? If it's virtual, advocating with their defense attorney and the DAs, making sure that you are sharing the most appropriate sensitive information, protected information that is not going to be violating anything, and making sure that that person is not getting unduly charged or arrested and going into jail simply because of the symptomatology of a medical condition, right? So these are all areas where you need to be competent. I can't clearly go into all of this right now, but here's some fun little things. You guys know what those 2 are? What's the bottom picture? The bottom is Westchester County Jail. Welcome to the house, right? And the top is Sing Sing in Ossining, right? That's the only prison in Westchester County. And of course, there's millions of them in all of New York State. And for you, again, I'm talking about being culturally competent about what a person what their experiences are engaging in all these different systems. Some of the different things that Mr. Operation went through, right? So when I worked in here, somewhere on this side, right, and it was my office building and I was working, you have to understand prison and jail culture, how they might respond to you, some of the services that they get in there, what it's like to be discharged, what's it like to be recidivized in and out of a system, that's been in prison for a longer period of time, what does that do to them, and how are they going to present to you very differently from somebody that cycles in and out probably every 3 months, right? And I worked with both people coming out of the prisons as well as those in the jail. You guys know the difference between a jail and a prison? What is it? The time you spend. Good. Hope you guys know that, because some people like to interchangeably say, oh, somebody went to prison, somebody went to jail. No, which one? And what does that really mean, right? So, difference. Jails, under 12 months. Prisons, pretty much more severe crimes, typically felonies, and more than 12 months. Doesn't mean that somebody can't be in a jail for more than 12 months, especially if you're going back and forth to court and dealing with sentencing and everything else. But know the difference. Somebody coming out of prison has been away for 3 years or 10 years or whatever, and they're going to come out with a jail face and a different attitude because they don't trust anybody, right? You're talking to them and it's, why did they do that? Because of jail culture. They have to protect themselves. They can't be happy and fun when they meet with you. They don't know who you are. They can't show weakness or softness at that point. So when you're dealing with somebody and they're frustrated, they don't engage, they don't talk. Why? Because they came out of a system where they had to do that to self-protect, right? And then if they're coming out, and then technology changes. Remember when I was doing this, and that's when everything started becoming Bluetooth. You have somebody that's been in for 10 years, and then you're walking around them with something in your ear, and they start talking. Are you having hallucinations, they're going to say? TVs are different. Phones are different. Everything is different. They're in a culture shock. I picked somebody up from Kingston, in Kingston, and it was in an electric car. Flipped out. He thought the car was just in neutral, and we were going, because it made no sound, and he held on for dear life. And I had to explain to him, the cars don't make a room sound anymore, right? All these different things that you need to have. I had to have this whole pre-conversation prior to discharge before we got into the car. I don't want you to be traumatized by what the world looks like now because you've been gone away, right? Culturally competent to be able to make sure that your clients are safe and well connected. And another fun one is that you guys understand the difference between probation and parole. Somebody that is coming out of a prison goes to parole, right? There's 2 parole offices in New Rochelle and Peekskill, and probation, there's some scattered ones. And again, people can be on probation. There are ATI, alternatives to sentencing, incarceration, community supervision. So what are your takeaways from me going on this major ramble, right? Always know that you're the main link between the client and multiple systems. You have to be the one to help guide somebody in their life until they can do it for themselves, and you can empower them to do it for themselves. Secondly, you have multiple roles. You're an advocate, you're a teacher, same way I just had to educate families and had to educate that client. You are in that role. You have to let people know. Don't assume that people just know how to do things, because then they wouldn't need you, right? You're a coordinator and you're a listener. Shut up. There's something we teach I also assist, Sarah and I assist with the police academy trainings and to do the CIT trainings with police recruits and experienced officers. So that's another thing that we do. There's something called the 80-20 rule. Has anybody heard of it? Go ahead, Chris. Yeah. Simple. Yes, just in communication, especially with clients. 80, yes, so pretty much 80% listen, 20% talk. You need to start listening to your clients. Don't over-talk people and not hear what they have to say. What they're dealing with is valid and it's true for them. Just because it doesn't mean anything for you, doesn't mean it's not impacting how they respond to the world and respond to you. Sometimes we need to just shut up and listen. Take it in and be person-centered with what that person's experiences are, right? So always ensure that the person has the right to self-determine or involved in the planning process. We like to direct people and tell them what to do, but if they have no buy-in into it, who's going to follow you, right? They have to want it for themselves as well. Walking with someone through the process is very different than directing a person through a process. Get up and get out. Once you're able to, post-COVID, I don't know what your restrictions are, but with that, when the time comes, walk the walk with the person. I know what I'm doing and what I'm talking about so succinctly right now because I've walked the walk. I've been there, I've listened, I felt the pain that they felt in that moment when I was with them. So I know how to address it and deal with it and advocate at that time. And learn the difference between rehabilitation and habilitation. Don't assume that you're able to just have somebody return to a pattern of living and lifestyle that they've had before. What if they never had it? What if they never learned how to live in a house, how to engage with people successfully, how to never use substances because that's just been a part of their life? And you're saying, why don't you just return to this? I want to get you back. No, there's no getting back. You need to habilitate somebody. You need to teach them how to live the way that's going to keep them safe, right? So that's going to change the conversation you have with them once you're able to effectively assess what their needs are by listening and assessing what's going on. And you're going to do that by being with them and understanding the systems that they have engaged with. If you're frustrated by the system, experience some, you can expect what they're going through and their frustration, right? Times 100. So know that, understand that, and know that we are here for you. We are trying to develop the system to make it more successful for everybody that's involved. And I thank you for being here and listening and participating because, again, case management is an evidence-based practice that involves our connection and collaboration with people who are vulnerable in this community, right? So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening, guys.